the size of the auditor's office at all? Can you do this with the same, salary?
Yeah, no, I think we can do it with the folks that we have there now. And I mean, just to be totally blunt, I mean, you've got an auditor who used a headhunter to go get the head of the performance audit division. That person has left, along with a huge number of the staff in the performance audit division. And what we are hearing from some of the folks who have left is it's because of the politics within the auditor's office. And so arguably you've had a number of people who have left who aren't working for the state. Certainly we have an auditor that spent tax dollars on buying a headhunter to attract someone to be the head of the performance audit division who's no longer even in state government. So it's a little discouraging when we've spent tax dollars to find somebody who was supposed to be doing a great job for the taxpayers, and that person's no longer even in the administration.
John, you talk about making recommendations for clawback. How far does the auditor's authority go when it comes to making collections? Yeah,
I mean, the auditor doesn't collect. That is the responsibility of the Attorney General. And again, I think what I'm recommending is that at the outset that, as was recommended back in 2010, that with the businesses that are going to receive these grants, we do a better job of training them on the front end so that they remain in compliance. I mean, the goal should be that those who receive these dollars have an understanding of what they can use them for and then what their responsibilities are for reporting. And it shouldn't be something where we're coming in after the fact and saying, shame on you. It should be at the front end. We do all we can to train them to make sure that they are spending the money appropriately so that the economic impact in the local community in fact happens. And furthermore, that the communities that these businesses reside in have a better understanding of what the economic impact is supposed to be for them. Because oftentimes we're laying tax abatements on top of these grant awards, and so local school, local safety forces, others are losing tax dollars they would otherwise be getting. And so we need to make sure that in fact the new jobs that are supposed to be created are in fact being created, and that the communities themselves, the local municipalities and counties, are helping to hold these businesses accountable for the jobs and economic impact they're supposed to be creating.
On the charter school staff, why is it the auditor's responsibility to, gauge educational outcomes for these schools?
Well, I think, frankly, it should be all of our responsibility. The auditor, though, is the chief inspector of the state of Ohio, and it is the responsibility of the auditor to make sure that we are pulling back the curtains and showing the public what they're getting for their money. And when it comes to charter schools and public schools, as elected officials, we should be supporting excellent educational opportunities. And if we continue to fund things that aren't working, that's not a particularly good plan for the taxpayers of the state. And charter schools are no longer an experiment in Ohio. They've been here for a decade and a half. And so at this point, the auditor should be showing the flow of money from districts to charter schools, what the educational attainment levels are, and frankly, to be blunt, it does not appear that the Department of Education has been holding up their end of the bargain. And the auditor is supposed to be looking over the shoulder of the Department of Education to make sure, in fact, that they are holding these schools accountable. But at the end of the day, this is about parents having better information about what schools in their community are actually achieving results so that they can put their kids in schools that are going to actually move them along and give them the real educational opportunity that they deserve. Yeah, Kathy.
Well, I kind of wanted to follow up. I think it was Jim that asked, or that collections is not the auditor's job. So
that's right.
How do you kind of make sure that, because the goal obviously is to see that happen, what can the auditor do in that regard? And is just exposing it sooner going to help in that way?
Certainly with respect to the rapid response auditing, when you identify that in fact fraud, waste, or abuse is happening, or potentially there's a substantial likelihood that fraud, waste, or abuse is happening, you do not want the auditor to delay in finding out whether or not in fact that's happening. And so having a rapid response audit division that can very quickly get to the bottom of whether or not in fact money is being wasted or fraud is happening, so as to then expose that fraud, pull the curtains back, and make sure that we aren't allowing them to continue to spend money that they have that is taxpayer money, and that they're not receiving additional dollars. And so, I think the auditor's role as chief inspector is to make sure that the public has an understanding of what's happening with their money, and then obviously referring it to the Attorney General to make sure that we are collecting any dollars that have been lost.
Are there any areas in particular that you're looking at? I mean, we're all aware of audits that come out well after the fact. of stuff that happened, but are there any particular areas where you're concerned about misspending or examples of misspending?
Well, I think clearly whether it is charter schools, whether it's economic development dollars around Jobs Ohio and grants that have been received, I think there's been, a number of different stories that seem to indicate that folks are potentially misspending dollars. And so, I think clearly on, the healthcare side, given that 45% of your state taxes are going to healthcare budget items, the fact is that we just need to make sure that we're responding much more quickly when we've identified that potentially money is being misspent. It hasn't all been misspent, so let's stem the flow of good money going after bad money wherever possible. And so, again, this is something that has been implemented in other states with effectiveness, and it's something that we clearly should be able to do here.
Are you confident that the numbers are out there for the auditor to look at when he goes into look at a business to see whether it created the number of jobs that it promised? There's been a lot of criticism that the state has not been tracking that very well.
Well, no, I'm not confident. I'm concerned about misreporting of job data here in the state. And again, as a constitutional office holder, it's the auditor's responsibility to make sure that we are giving accurate information to the public. And so, again, I think that's why you want to partner with the local community who is on the ground, living in the community. You've got local government officials who are able to provide additional insight. If we're talking about an economic development project in Cleveland and we're working with the mayor and the county executive in Cuyahoga County and saying, okay, well, these are the commitments that have been made by this local business as far as job creation, as far as private investment that they need to put up in order to get these grants, and working with them to make sure that we're holding these folks accountable who have claimed that they will, in fact, create that economic impact. And so I think it's partnering between those locals as well as having the state auditor and others trying to make sure that taxpayer money is being used for a real benefit, especially when that benefit's been promised by the grant recipient.
When it comes to job grants, though, I understand that it is a state grant, but a lot of times those deals have been brokered by Jobs Ohio. Do you have concerns that some of that information might be behind the Jobs Ohio wall when you go look?
I don't think that Jobs Ohio has the legitimacy to continue to shield the auditor's ability to look at information within Jobs Ohio. I think the constitutional authority of the office indicates that they should have the responsibility to follow that money.
So are you going to, just thinking that and doing something about it are two different things. What can you do to try to break through that shield?
Well, I think that, again, the Constitution is superior to the statutes of the state, and while the legislature and the governor may decide that they want to try to short-circuit the constitutional authority of the auditor, they actually do not have the authority to do so. And so it is the auditor's responsibility as a constitutional office holder to follow public money, but for liquor profits, Jobs Ohio wouldn't be in existence. So I believe that it's a creation of the public. It's appointed by, the board is appointed by a public office holder, that being the governor, and ultimately it's the responsibility of the auditor to follow that money and actually perform an audit and provide that information to the shareholders of the state, that being the taxpayers, which I plan to do.
Are you saying that you would override what the legislature has done and attempt an audit?
I will perform the constitutional responsibility of the auditor, which is to follow public money. So that's what I plan to do.
And if they don't let you look at it?
I have standing as auditor to get that information.
So you would sue for it, essentially?
I'm going to follow the responsibilities of the auditor and pursue public dollars. Yes, absolutely. That's the responsibility under the Constitution. I'm going to perform my responsibility as a constitutional office holder, which is to follow public money. And like I said, Jobs Ohio is a creation, but for the flow of public money, there would be no Jobs Ohio.
With that